So we do get some criticism, and I'm sure there will be more. It just doesn't matter because we've already made the decision. Hey, it's Dallas. Time for another director's vlog. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I have got today a couple of questions. These are some questions that we got at a recent screening where people filled out a bunch of cards. And so I've got this stack and I've grabbed a few of them for this vlog, and I'm going to do that throughout the year. Grab a few questions and just occasionally do a bit of a Q&A, some of your most commonly asked questions covering a wide variety of topics. I'm especially excited about today's vlog because I did an interview with Brandon Potter, who plays Quintus, the guy that you love to hate. I had a great conversation with Brandon that I'm looking forward to you seeing. As always, please hit the subscription or notification bell below this video. We recently passed 100,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for that. That really means a lot, and it's basically double what we had just a couple months ago. So this channel continues to grow, and you are a part of it. Oh, by the way, currently these are back. My favorite sweatshirt. This is so comfortable. I love this sweatshirt. I wear it seriously a couple times a week. This is available right now at thechosenmerch.com. www.thechosenmerch.com. If that's your first time hearing that jingle, I'm sorry. It will stick with you, but it has become a little bit of a fan favorite, I'm sorry to say. www.thechosenmerch.com will allow you to get this, our Binge Jesus gear. This is also in the form of a t-shirt. We've got some wristbands. We've got a whole bunch of cool stuff. So check out thechosenmerch.com. All right, I'm going to get right into it. So this is one of the questions that we got at this recent screening. When you were filming early on, was there any doubt that the project would not do as good as it did? Did your faith carry you? From the beginning, I rarely believed that the project would be a big success. I had no idea. In fact, I kind of got out of the prediction business. I really learned early on, after the failure box office-wise of my previous film, The Resurrection of Gavin Stone, that it's not my job to feed the 5,000, it's only to provide the loaves and fish. And in fact, I end almost every video with that message. I got kind of out of the prediction business. I don't really know or care whether the projects that I do are going to be immensely successful or immensely disappointing. I just do whatever is in front of me. Was there doubt that the project would not do as well as it did? I mean, it's become somewhat of a popular story that when we first started the crowdfund, I thought we'd be lucky to raise $800. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but I certainly didn't expect that we would be able to raise $10 million in crowdfunding and shatter the all-time crowdfunding record. I just had no idea. My partners over at VidAngel and my partners within The Chosen, they were much more optimistic. They kind of come at this with a typical entrepreneurial mindset, very optimistic, but I wasn't skeptical or optimistic of this. I really didn't have any idea. It wouldn't have shocked me. Well, what's happened with the show? I mean, I wouldn't say we're successful yet. When we get to the point where the show starts paying for itself, then I would consider that successful. But the fact that we're in every single country right now, the fact that we've had the impact that we've had, I mean, that's all been, that's exceeded at least my expectations somewhat, but I will be honest and say I haven't had many expectations. This question, why do the apostles appear so young, especially Matthew? Well, that's because the apostles were young. The 12 disciples that Jesus chose to follow him were very likely younger. They were probably teenagers. Simon was likely the oldest one because he's mentioned as having a mother-in-law, which means that he was married. He was probably the only one who was married. I mean, we don't know that for certain, but it's likely because he's the only one who's mentioned as being married. Students who had the ability to just follow a rabbi around tended to be teenagers because they weren't yet providing for their families. When I started to do the research for season 1, it seemed like the most likely scenario was that the disciples were young, that Simon may have been in his 20s, and maybe James and John and Andrew were a little older because, again, they were fishermen at the time that Jesus called them. There's lots of research for all of these issues, what they wore, what they looked like, how old they were. And so my job is to kind of look at all of that and find the consensus and then run that past scripture, of course, more than anything else, but also to talk to some of our experts. But sometimes it comes down to what makes the most sense, and the articles that indicated that the disciples were younger made the most sense. And I think that's probably most likely, and I think it's also interesting. Do you think you can get Joan Collins casted? That was actually a question. No. I have watched these episodes literally dozens of times. We've got a few people over at the Chosen Fan Club. If you go to Facebook and you look up the Chosen Fan Club, it's something that you'd really love. There's over 25,000 people now, all people who love the Chosen. Tons of great stuff discussed over there, questions asked. We have some content that's exclusive to the fan club. A lot of those people have watched the show literally dozens of times. It's crazy. It's awesome. As writers, how are you mentally and emotionally preparing for the inevitable crucifixion event and resurrection? Great question. And we see in the fan club people saying this a lot, like, oh my goodness, I cannot even think about the crucifixion season now without crying because now I've gotten to know these characters. I mean, that's exactly why we did this. We thought ahead to the end of the series, and we knew that the last season was going to be about the resurrection and the aftermath. The season before that was going to be the crucifixion. And one of our goals was to make sure that that season about the crucifixion was as heart-wrenching and as painful and as horrifying to watch as possible. And then, of course, the final season as joyous to watch as possible. And the way to make that happen was to really set it up properly. And I think that we're doing that so far, and I hope we continue to do that. And so we don't think about the crucifixion itself and the resurrection itself. That's too far off in the distance, and I don't think it would make sense for us to write constantly thinking about that. We want to make sure that each season and each episode is as good as it can be, and that if the show ended after season 1, that would still be effective. But we do write in the sense of wanting to earn those moments as much as possible. And so we're trying to set up these characters and write them in a way that makes you fall in love with them and really feel their pain and feel their joy when they experience it. And so hopefully that by the time you get to season 6, 7, 8, the emotional peaks and valleys are at their highest and lowest. That the show is so resonant with you that by the time we get to those seasons, it's just even more powerful. How much criticism do you receive for writing extra biblical dialogue? Out of 100 comments that we get on the show, either from people who've seen it or people who haven't seen it, 3 or 4 out of 100 are negative, criticizing the fact that we are writing things that are not in Scripture. I don't mind that because I knew that was going to come. Obviously, I wouldn't have done this show if I wasn't prepared for criticism and prepared for people who wouldn't like the fact that we were showing things or portraying things that weren't in Scripture. I have a whole other video about that. It's called Can You Trust the Chosen? We have other videos that talk about the fact that we have things that aren't in the Bible in the show. So you can check those videos out to get more detail. But in general, I would say when you listen to a sermon on a Sunday morning and the pastor reads the passage from the Gospels and then talks about what was going on in the culture, what was going on in history, and he gives you all of this context. You don't sit there and go, oh, wait, that's not in the Scripture, I don't want to hear it. Having scriptural context has always been a way to enhance your relationship with Scripture. Now, this is a little bit different because it's fiction. Some of the things that we're adding to the show are fictional, or at least we hope that they're plausible, but they're not necessarily known. It would be a shame if the only shows that could be made about history were outside of first century Galilee. That you can make a historical show about any major historical figure except those who lived in first century Galilee because Scripture exists and therefore nothing else can exist about those people. And I just don't agree with that philosophy. I think that it's important for us to follow the character and intentions of Scripture. And I think it's important for us to be as faithful as we can to Scripture. So when we show something from Scripture, it's accurate and we don't change it. But when we're adding things and adding some of the context historically and culturally and adding some artistic imagination and backstory for what could have led to those moments, as long as we're fitting within the intentions and characters of Scripture and are doing things that are plausible and are especially careful with our portrayal of Jesus, I just don't have a problem with it. Obviously, if I didn't, I wouldn't have done the show. So we do get some criticism, and I'm sure there will be more. It just doesn't matter because we've already made the decision. But we do run these things past our historical and biblical experts. We do bathe them in prayer, and I do have accountability within my partners and with my wife and with our biblical scholars to make sure that we are as faithful as humanly possible. All right, I'm going to get right into our interview with Brandon Potter. I think you'll love it. He's a really cool dude, and so check this out. All right, so I am here with a friend of mine. We didn't know each other actually until The Chosen, but has since become a friend and collaborator. I consider you, Brandon. This is Brandon Potter, by the way, who plays.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon.
The one that everyone loves to hate. But I had to wear this sweatshirt, which just because I want to show it off and I want people to want to buy it. But
oh yeah. Well, I didn't get to see the back. Can you spin around so I can see the back again?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that looks great.
So yeah, but it's kind of a dumb move because it's making me hotter. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and take it off. Okay. Mission accomplished. People are excited about the sweatshirt. Now I can concentrate. Perfect. All right. So Brandon, the first time that I ever met you was in the audition for Quintus in Texas, and we had actually done some casting sessions in Los Angeles. And there was a Quintus that I had auditioned that I really liked. And the decision had essentially been made until you walked in. I think within about 10 seconds, kind of, took over the room with your portrayal. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on that? How did this project come across your desk? What did you think when you read it? But just tell me your experience of just getting the script and what you thought of it, and just the whole process of casting.
I'm an actor in Dallas, right? And I do auditions every day for all kinds of things, and it varies from whatever car commercials to maybe bit parts on a series, right? So because of just the sort of volume of it, I don't really talk to anyone about auditions because that's 9 times out of 10 it's a no anyway. You know what I mean? So you just sort of get up, you do the audition, you hope to meet people or win the room, not necessarily the role, right?
Sure.
What you're doing is really sort of burnishing your reputation when you go into an audition room, not necessarily kill or be killed for the part.
Sure.
But as soon as I read this thing, I was on another shoot for an eyeglass company that I do a spokesperson work for, right? And as soon as I read the script, I talked to one of my castmates, and I was like, Kanisha, I got this thing. Did you? And she's like, yeah, I got it. And I was like, it's really good, right? So we were both really taken aback by just how good it was, how great the storytelling was. It seems really at home in the golden age of TV sort of era that we're in, right? That the writing is literary, that the treatment seemed both visceral and, sort of aspirational, right, at the same time.
Sure.
It really, really stood out. And I remember talking to her about that, and she felt the same. And I was like, okay, then I think this is just a good thing that's happening, right?
Right.
Which, obviously, I want to work on good stuff, but I don't know that it got my hopes up at all. And if you remember, those original versions of Quintus had him as kind of maybe a lush, right? Kind of a party boy or something like that.
Yeah, like a frat boy who was drunk the first time that he's talking to Matthew, the first time we meet him. And yeah, I remember you came in and you interpreted the script accurately. And then we talked, and I said, and I think I even said this to you, I said, I regret kind of how we wrote it, and I'm thinking I'm going to change it. So why don't you try this and have him much more intelligent and much more strategic and all of that, and take out the drunk stuff. And I just remember how immediately eager you were to play and eager you were. And I said, I didn't want to make it cliche because I felt like the young frat boy, drunken Roman soldier was going to be cliche. And I just remember you just jumped right on it and were willing to play right away.
Use escorts and children. So where are you going?
Secure the passageway, Peter.
There's an extra grape for you inside. Come on.
I remember that, and I remember having a really, really good time. And one of the reasons is because we've seen the sort of glutton, sloth Roman before, right? But the thing that is lost in that translation is the extreme efficiency that the empire was run with for so long, right? These folks knew what they were doing. Obviously, there was a reason that it all crumbled, right? And that was probably decadence played a part in it, right? But for a long time, it wasn't that way. For a long time, they were expert administrators. They were expert military. They were the best in the world, right? And as soon as you mentioned that, I was like, yes, I think I understand what's going on here. And that gave me a little bit of instead of the sort of leaning back party boy energy, it became a little bit more forward, right? It became forward. It became focused on like precision and getting the exact thing that you want from whoever's in front of you.
And that's what I think we discovered as we were working through the scene, both in the audition and then on the day when we were filming, was how intriguing Matthew would be to Quintus, because Matthew is actually sharper than he is in many ways. He's actually more Roman, certainly, than any Jew that Quintus has ever met. And in fact, more than most Romans. In fact, he has a line that says, I've been searching the world for people who are brave enough to speak up and to be bold. And here you are doing it. And we thought, wouldn't it be interesting if Quintus actually really liked and was intrigued by Matthew and kind of became like his little, like Matthew became his toy that he could use, but for serious purposes.
Yeah, he definitely has some kind of brain crush on him, if you know what I mean by that. He's really, really fascinated by how all that machinery works.
I am in need. You heard me right. I am in need of your machine.
Quintus knows that it can be used for something wonderful. Well,
Exactly.
in his mind,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
And I think part of the delight for Quintus is figuring out exactly how to use it, you know, exactly where to apply it. And
exactly. So a lot of people are curious about this kind of a thing. What you bring to the role yourself. There's kind of a myth through the ages in acting circles that it's acting is you're becoming someone else, and so you're that's what your job is to become someone else, and
Sure.
and when in fact you always need to bring a little bit of yourself to the character. There's a reason that you were cast. Each person is cast because of something of themselves that they bring. But that's got to feel a little bit different when you're playing someone who is a racist, who has done and will do despicable things like Quintus. So I'm sure it's easy to do the part that we've done, which is, or at least some of it, where he's smart, he's funny, he's intriguing. That's got to be easy to play. Not easy, but at least relatable. But what about when, there's that scene where he gives that speech about Jews and how they are kind of wired to be divisive and they're victims and kind of some of the more anti-Semitic cliches through the years that he believes in.
I know a dirty secret. You people want to be ruled. You want an excuse to complain. It's part of your nature. Do you understand that, Matthew?
I don't know.
No, you wouldn't.
What's that process for you as the actor?
So when you're playing someone who does ugly things, right, it can be difficult to advocate for your character. Mm-hmm. But that is what you have to do. That is the job. I don't have to become a murderer to play one, and I don't have to become a racist to play one. But what I do have to do is think about why. To what end are those things? To what end does he engage in that behavior? And almost always it comes down to they think that will protect them or the ones that they love, or perhaps it will garner love and affection from other people. So you start thinking in terms of there's this gaping hole in Quintus's soul that can only be filled by the adoration of his peers, and that can only happen if he exerts total control over a population, if he views them as less than human so that he can exert that control. So in a strange way, instead of in my mind the whole time going like, this guy is an anti-Semitic coward, he's a jerk, he's trying to perpetrate a horrible crime. Do you know what I mean? Instead of doing that, which would not make for a very good day on set for us, right? Instead of that, I think like, if I can get this guy to do what I want, if I can make him feel this big, if I can get him to do what I want, then maybe I'll get the love that I need. Maybe I'll get the energy to survive.
Sure, and no one wakes up thinking I'm going to be evil today.
Right.
No one wakes up unless they're a satanic, sociopathic, demon-possessed, something like that.
Sure, yeah.
Most people who, especially someone who would achieve what Quintus has achieved, has what they would consider to be rational feelings. And two of the characters in movie history that I was somewhat inspired by in writing Quintus with my co-writers, and I'm curious if you had anything that you drew from when you were playing it, were Ralph Fiennes' character in Schindler's List,
of course,
and Christoph Waltz's character in Inglourious Bastards. Two characters who were demonically anti-Semitic, but who were intelligent, who had reasons for their beliefs, at least reasons that they believed were justifiable. And they found a way somehow to dehumanize human beings, which I think they had to do to justify their behavior. And I'm wondering if even just in the scene that you're playing with Matthew, with Paris, for example, with Kirk, who was playing Gaius, was there any of that, or do you just kind of turn that on and off when the cameras start rolling?
I think the two characters that you just mentioned are wonderful examples, because not only are both of them part of massive organizations that have really strict codes for moral behavior, for your daily schedule, for the schedules of the people that they are subjugating. I mean, they are a real powerful bureaucrats, right? Both of these organizations. That can appeal to a certain personality type. I think both of those characters, the head of the concentration camp and this hunter, right, that Christoph Waltz was. But I think Quintus also will never stop clawing his way to the top, even if he's at the top. And
Sure.
that could be because he's missing something in his life, right? Like love, right? Or it could be that he experienced so much pain when he was young that he doesn't know another language, right?
Right.
It could be either one of those things.
Right.
But
Well, we hint at that when Quintus is talking about one of his rivals, and he
That's right,
says
come to town.
his father gave him everything, your father gave you nothing, you know, and you're saying we hint at Quintus's father gave him nothing. You've had to work and crawl on glass to get you where you are. You want to get even higher, but whether that happens or not, you're going to make your region that you're in charge of the best, cleanest. That's why you say, I don't even like crowds. I don't even like killing. It's dirty.
Yeah.
It's messy. He's not interested in killing people just for sport. It's inefficient. And
Right.
so he's trying to make it the best place that it can possibly be. And so in many ways, it gives your character some rational goals.
That's exactly right. But and the best way to get on top of his opponent, right, of his rival, is to show plans for infrastructures like nation building.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is
Right.
new to Quintus, I think. And that really does sort of further the case of always clawing his way to the top, even if he's already at the top. He was still in scramble to the top mode. And, Parsons' character says, wait a minute, you're already at the top.
Right.
Now just improve the top to show how kingly you are up here, how much you're bettering. Just your presence is bettering these savages out here,
Right. Right. And that's what's so cool about the scene is that you're getting this brilliant advice from someone that you've been trained to hate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think it's interesting in episode 8 when you find out that Matthew has been taken from you, that he's found someone better, that someone he likes better.
Matthew left. He quit, Dominus.
What do you mean, he quit? Why would you let him quit?
He is a contractor. I had no recourse.
Quit to do what?
He is to become a student.
Of what? Don't make me keep asking questions,
He
Primmy.
is to study the Jewish God. He left to follow a holy man, the man from the Eastern Ghetto. That is all I know.
Oh, I really don't like that man.
There's almost this woundedness, like, well, dang, there's this like you're really, you start to get jealous in a way.
Absolutely. And I think that it's almost as though it were written this way, Dallas, that from this point, there can be, because that is an actual emotional wound, right? For this guy to go away, like you said, jealousy. I think that sort of cerebral nature of Quintus may be edged out by something a little bit more raw, a little bit more reactionary and visceral. That there's the potential for the chief rational guy to not be rational when his emotions are in the way, when his emotions are at play like this, or in play.
Right. Well, and, don't want to give away any spoilers, but we may or may not be seeing Quintus in season 2, and he may or may not actually encounter some of these, people that he's been hearing about. So we're working on that now, and I'll make sure that before the fans do. But we do have plans. We do have plans for Quintus, even though our team has left Capernaum. So I just have 2 more questions for you before we let you go. One is just the experience of working with Paris, with Kirk, with Eric Avari, and Janice, Nicodemus's wife. All 4 of them are four of our probably more cerebral actors. And I'm curious what it was like working with them, just what your experience was like working on the set, because you were so disconnected from every other character in the show. I mean, really, your scenes are with 2 people at most. Can you just kind of speak briefly to your experience of working with Eric Avari, who's been killing it for decades?
Oh my
Same with
gosh.
Janice and Kirk and Paris, who are all 4 of them, just very serious cerebral actors.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to work with all of them because they're extraordinarily talented people and they have good words to speak and a great set to work on. So in that regard, it's just fun, right? That you can show up and really engage in that kind of creative dialogue with people where you're throwing the ball, right? They're catching it and they're throwing it back. And like no clinkers, right? There's things that need to be directed. There's things that need to be tried again, but it really is a delightful experience. In terms of being more or less sequestered, right? Because they all have scenes with different people, and I sort of only have scenes with a few people. It could feel like, like if you're a character actor, if you're a bit player or whatever, you come in and you have your one scene, you leave, right? But this doesn't exactly feel that way because the scenes are meaty. What it feels like is, every time I do it, it feels like the kids are playing in the garage, right?
Huh.
And you go out and like check on them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like make sure no one's breaking their arms, make sure they're not scratching the car, like that kind of thing. So it feels the fact that I'm somewhere else and I come in for these scenes where people are threatened, maybe, or there's the possible exercise of power about to happen, right? It doesn't feel like a bit thing. It feels like a hammer waiting to fall in every scene or something like that. I really like that. It feels special to just sort of walk in with a couple of people and say, this is how it's going to be. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're about now. I can sort of set the tone and then leave. Do you know what I mean? Right. Especially because on a personal level, they are so talented, right? And in the real world, they would be telling me what to do. But in our show, I get to tell them what to do. And it's kind of magical.
Right. Well, I think I know the audience is looking forward to where I think we're headed, is where Quintus and Jesus ultimately have a conversation, and that's going to be really fun because Quintus is going to even be fully up against someone who he's never experienced before. But on that note, this is my final question, is the fans. I know that you haven't been quite as involved like in the fan club and whatnot, but the response to this show internationally has been significant. There's a fan club on Facebook that is now over 27,000 people. Our main Facebook page is over 500,000. Our YouTube channel just passed 100,000. And people oftentimes post memes about you or about Quintus and talk about, how much, they're kind of a character they love to hate. I'm just curious, and it's okay if the answer is no, but have you experienced any fans? Has anyone met you and said, I recognize you from The Chosen? Have you been able to have some friends and family who've seen the show and been able to capture your performance?
I've had my friends and family watch the show, and they really, really, really enjoyed it. I have not been recognized out and about. And because I'm like an old man shaking my fist at the new, I am not really on Facebook. I have a profile and stuff like that. I'm not really on it. But you saying all of this stuff makes me want to go check that stuff out, though. Right. So I think that's going to be my first order of business, is to check out what sort of Quintus memes there are. What are people saying about him? I don't even know.
Right.
This is very exciting.
Well, I just want to say before we go, Brandon, to the viewer, the viewer, Brandon has been one of the most fun actors to work with. I mean, our whole cast is terrific. We have an amazing cast and crew, and this experience of shooting this show, I think, has been universally by the cast and crew acknowledged as one of our favorites. But Brandon has been just an extraordinarily, what we in the business sometimes refer to as like a play partner, someone to play with. Just so much fun, and not at all like Quintus, but a true joy to be around. But Brendan, to you, I want to say thank you for your performance in season one. You really gave the show in season one a dimension that Bible projects rarely have. Bible projects are usually stiff, formal. They go from Bible verse to Bible verse. Everything is very, very black and white. And I think you've been so willing to kind of work within those shades and kind of rounding the edges a little bit, making this show feel much more human and not like, as you and I talk about, the mustache twirling villain that just comes on screen and we can instantly boo and laugh off. But this is someone who actually feels like a real human being. And I think that's actually even more scary than the more cliched villain. So thank you for coming on today, for joining us with it. Dallas. And I hope you do get a chance to start engaging with the fans a little bit and hearing just how much people really love the show and love your performance.
Right on. Thank you so very much, Dallas. Thanks for having me on today, and thanks for bringing me to come and play on The Chosen. It has been one of the great joys of my professional life to work with you and the rest of the cast and crew.
Great. Thanks so much, and we'll talk soon. And just remember, to the viewer, it's not your job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the loaves and fish. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell under this video if you haven't yet, and I will talk to you soon.